Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, the podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, Agile experts, including professional Scrum trainers and other industry thought leaders, share their stories and experiences. We also explore hot topics in our space with thought-provoking, challenging, energetic discussions. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. And in today's podcast, we're talking about AI and the implication for your organization's operating system. Okay, let me just give you a little bit of background. So recently there was a stat that I saw that AI projects are failing at about 95%, meaning, because it's very important to define a meaning here, meaning that people are spending money on AI and not seeing the value afterwards. And so that's understandable. It's very new technology. It's certainly not well understood yet, right? But this led to a very interesting conversation with a colleague, friend of mine, Yuval, who's also going to be on this podcast. I'll introduce him in a moment, about what does that mean? Why? What's happening? Is there a problem with organizations' ability to take this technology and deploy it? Is it something to do with the technology? Is it et cetera, et cetera? And that conversation was quite interesting. So I thought I would try to repeat some of that conversation today in our podcast, because I think this is actually a really interesting topic. So I'm very lucky that Yuval wasn't busy on this Friday afternoon, and I persuaded him to come and join us on today's podcast. I've got Yuval Yvet. You may know him, PST, SAFe fellow, Kanban leader. What's interesting about Yuval, and the reason why I was even talking to him about this, was he's really interested in transforming how organizations operate to be more empirical, to be more inspect, adapt, transform kind of oriented. And that's kind of his thing. So that's why I started talking to him and asked that question. And that's where this conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Yuval.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here again.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've done a lot of research on operating systems and the whole thing really around how organizations operate, both at really large, boring, no, don't say boring, more traditional companies and much smaller, more dynamic companies. Some of our listeners may have listened to the Dino Therapeutics conversation, which you were heavily involved in their transformation and the like. So I guess at the heart of this question that kicked all of this off is, we've got AI, and particularly generative AI and LLMs, and now we're getting these agent kind of mechanisms coming into the market with ChatGPT. We've got LMNs. So the question is, what is the implications for organizations' operating systems of this new technology?
So I look at it as a convergence of a couple of things. You mentioned Dino, so maybe a bit of a background how I backed into this world of company level operating systems, whatever you call it, that's the way I think about it. In some of the organizations that I work with, Dino was one example. We realized that in order to really move the needle on the strategic growth that the organization needs, you need to go beyond just the product organization. You improve the product organization, you level up your agility, and you see the constraint is elsewhere. It's in marketing, or bringing in the right partners, or making the onboarding experience work great. So we saw opportunities to leverage the same ideas that we use to accelerate and bring more value and create better outcomes inside the technology organization, in people operations, in finance, in marketing, in partner success, in the interaction between these different groups, because a lot of strategic value comes from the interaction. So that's how I got into this space. I encountered Dyna was using some flavor of the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, which afterwards I learned was pretty popular in, the world of scale-ups and mid-market companies, sometimes companies that have nothing to do with technology or very little to do with technology, as a way to bring some sense, some discipline into organizations as they scale, to help founders scale their organization. To come back to the what's going on with AI conversation, I think AI is one example where organizations without the right operating system, without the right approach, are struggling to get the value out of it. And you can see it at two levels. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to quickly say, because a lot of AI adoption, from looking a little bit more details at that number, is being done outside traditional IT organizations. It's being done in sales, marketing, legal, etc. And they're taking this technology and saying, "Oh, can I build something that quickly reviews contracts?" And they build something and it works, and then they realize it doesn't work quite as well as they thought it worked, and then they're like, oh, that's unsuccessful, that wasn't quite what I wanted. So I just wanted to, that's what I'm seeing anyway, so that probably has an implication, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, you were talking about those numbers and I have deja vu, because we both know what the chaos report says about the success rates of IT projects, success from the perspective of, do they complete on budget, on time, do they deliver the scope? And then later on, after we improve that and create better feature factories, we started to look at, are they delivering outcomes? Is there evidence that those successful projects, that minority of successful projects, are they actually moving the needle for the business? And we've gone a long way in IT towards creating more value for our business. I don't think we're anywhere close to, the nirvana of being customer-centric, outcome-focused, empirical, evidence-based product organizations in IT or in technology in most organizations. But when you start to look beyond the people that have been exposed to these ideas, it's like the Stone Age. It's, a similar challenge of, there's this new technology, there's this new opportunity. It's very tempting to spend your time on LLM geekery and, trying to make sure that the data is clean and talking about legal aspects all of the time. But very few people talk about, why are we doing this? What's the business purpose for this? And even those disciplined organizations are running AI adoption as a project. And we've learned what are the problems with treating complex initiatives, strategic initiatives as a project. We've learned that focusing on scope, even if you deliver that scope, doesn't necessarily deliver the value.
So ultimately, the sort of premise is, because EOS and the like, or most operating systems that are being used by organizations, would treat AI like they would treat, oh, we need to build a new building, we need to run an event, it literally is a defined scoped, sort of like, it's a project. And what fundamentally, that when your operating system has this concept of projects within it as a mechanism for driving change and driving everything, then that isn't necessarily the most successful orientation for AI, right?
Yes, but I'd argue that it's not just AI. I'd argue that if you look at, based on what I've seen, okay, my experiences, whenever I look at the challenges that companies are really facing, their strategic challenges, what keeps their CEO, C-level, management team up at night, tackling those challenges, developing their organization, working on growth, whether it's a mom and pop shop, whether it's a scale up company, whether it's a mid market, or whether it's the enterprises, those challenges, regardless of whether they are product development challenges or company development challenges, are complex. There's a lot that is unknown, a lot that is uncertain. They're bets. They're bets on, if we build this new standard operating procedure, if we build this new process, if we give people ChatGPT, if we do this, if we do that, will people want to use it? Is it something that is worth our investment in it? Is it even feasible to achieve this? A lot of the time our focus is too much on, is it possible to achieve this? Or even, let's just assume it is, let's build a plan and let's deploy it. And we're not thinking about the human aspects. We're not thinking about our organization as an organ, as a living thing. We're not really, making the assumption that we don't know, that we need to balance championing and, focusing on something with being skeptics. It's not in the interest of leadership teams to be skeptics about their strategic initiatives.
No, I definitely have unfortunately fallen for that myself. Yes, unfortunately, but I just want to take it back. So what we found with Scrum in particular was that product orientation, meaning that when an organization aligns, invests, and has this sort of product mindset around the capabilities that support or are the business, as it were. Let's not use the word support because they're so commingled, it's almost like they are. That product mindset, coupled with the investments and the structures and the empowerment, etc., provides a mechanism to ultimately deal with that complexity because it gives continuous context, as it were. Is that now? I probably waffled on and used all sorts of bizarre words there, but at the heart of it, product is the right paradigm, right? We've found, and is that true for these organizations wrestling with AI?
I think it is. I'm pretty sure that these organizations are not thinking about it as product. But if you think about the challenges that, let's say, a mid-market company faces or a scale-up faces, there's running the operation, running the customer factory, running marketing, bringing people through the funnel, fulfillment, serving them, whatever it is that you do. It can be a professional service, it can be a dental clinic, an architectural firm, it can be a product company that, software as a service that onboards, activates these people. We need to make sure that they use the product, that they're happily using, that they don't churn the other end, that they refer other people, that the flywheel is spinning. That's running the operation. But just you constantly need to think about, how do I spin the flywheel faster? You need to continue to develop the organization. And developing the organization is both through developing a product that will, developing a product that will serve our customers, our external customers better, and also developing the company so that people inside the company, our internal customers or constituents, can do a better job serving our customers and operating this customer factory. So I do think the product model, the product metaphor works, because once you start to see these key business processes as products, and you have people that own their effectiveness at creating outcomes, you start to think about, how do I develop them? How do we get the organization to a mode where they think this way is an interesting challenge.
And the thing that's also interesting about the product paradigm, so yeah, an organization could think about the capabilities that it uses to serve the customers and the products itself it provides as all products, meaning, a help desk could be a product, sales and marketing could be a product, and you can think of the capabilities of an organization around that. The benefit of that is that you have a roadmap for how you're improving it, how you're going to change it. You also know how much you're investing in it, which is something I definitely, as a small business when I was at TaskTop, just making decisions about where we invested. Do we invest in a help desk? Do we instead invest in more software engineers? Do we invest in, was actually really hard. I mean, it was at that moment of crisis, we made a decision and hired somebody or spent some money. It was not very strategic. The benefit of approaching this from a product paradigm is you get that strategicness because you've basically decided where you're putting your money, and then you can review how that's going, and then you can make changes based on that. So there's something very compelling about that. The other thing that's really interesting about the product paradigm is, in the context of AI, the most successful uses personally of AI that I've had are where I bound the problem, meaning I provide a consistent context, I pick the right model, the AI engine knows the boundaries, and the solution that comes out from the AI engine is very different when it hasn't got those boundaries. We're actually, interestingly, using AI on some thought leadership around some of the ideas that we're building around products. So now it's getting very complicated. And by binding that, by actually saying, this is what we mean, this is the boundary, it's made it a lot more successful. So that's another compelling reason to start thinking about your business in that sort of product paradigm as well, in AI. Does that make sense? Is that what you've seen as well, Yuval?
Yes, I think about it as context development. So the context, the additional information that you provide the AI engine when you're working with it on anything is crucial. I've seen that. I spend a lot of time. I spend more time developing the context for my AI usage than the actual prompts. And it's improved my personal AI effectiveness dramatically.
Yeah.
And if you look at how I do it, if you look at the fact that I'm creating a space, a ChatGPT project, probably not the right name if we're talking about products, or
Yeah, I get it.
a Gemini gem, whatever, and the instruction prompt that I use there, I develop it using something like Scrum. I don't run a full Scrum process, but I stop myself, let's say after a day that I've been using that prompt, and I ask myself, as well as the AI engine, how are we doing? Are we getting good results? How could we improve this prompt based on the conversations we've had? Let's look at how often did I have, constructive feedback for you, or even non-constructive feedback for you, because I'm not as nice with AI as I should be with the future overlords.
Yes.
And we improve the prompt. We create another version of the prompt, and it's not under source control right now. I should, probably do that better, but I have a version 4.5 of my personal advisory board, Gemini Gem, that I use. So context development is crucial. And like you're saying, the more you think about your products, your customer factory, how are you creating value in your organization? Where are the constraints? Where are the bottlenecks? What's the strategic focus? The better results AI will give you, and the better results people that are developing AI capabilities for the organization will be able to deliver. The key for me, what I see, where people are finding gold using AI, whether it's a small organization, whether it's an individual, or whether it's an enterprise, is when they use product techniques, whether they call it product or not, to think through AI strategy and execute on AI development attempts or AI projects, if you want to call it that, with the mindset of let's focus on what's the problem that we want to solve here. What is our strategy? Where do we want to play with AI inside the organization? The challenge in the past was where do we hire another person? The challenge right now is no, we're not going to hire additional people, but where do we want to hire AI? Where do we want to focus our AI attempts? Is it marketing? Is it the fact that we're leaking people? Is the overall customer experience that involves both the product as well as customer success? Is it onboarding and activating people? We get people, we get MQLs, but those people aren't really using our product. Maybe it's something on the product side, maybe it's something else that relates to onboarding customers. Whatever it is, we want to be focusing AI on our strategic challenges, on the things we believe will move the needle or will affect the bottom line if we improve them.
And things like OKRs can provide a really good mechanism for grounding that focus, as it were. And if you're using a product model, those OKRs work within the context of the products, in the context of a broader business strategy. I haven't really thought about this before, and I know we started talking about it, and then I said, stop, let's put this on a podcast. So it's probably a little sort of left fieldy. But as you decompose your business into a series of products, each of those products have a value, have certain service levels, certain capabilities, certain stakeholders, obviously, who have a set of needs. You start building these context warehouses for each product, and then exploring prompts that based on the problems that are manifest, the OKR, the objectives that you're trying to solve, as it were. And then ultimately that creates an overall operating system. It's like decomposing the computer, to use the operating system analogy or metaphor, into a series of elements that have clearly defined interfaces, which is obviously the capabilities that they provide. And you get to then explore that using AI, and the AI becomes secondary to the value that the product provides in the context of the OKRs that you're providing. Is that right? Is that real left field, or is that what you're proposing?
In a sense, but also as you're talking through the decomposition, there's a siren going on in my head about the anti-pattern that I see often when people go into this decomposition. You mentioned help desk earlier. Is help desk a product? I don't know. We need to be careful and talk about our value streams. Like it's tempting for people to take their organization and say, you're the VP sales, sales is a product. You're the VP marketing, marketing is a product. You're the VP product, product is a product. You're the VP people, it's a product. But what we've seen, for example, at Dino, to bring it back, is that the product is not those functions. No, the product is the onboarding experience, and separately, the overall employee experience, what they call the aviator experience, and the partner experience is
and capsule development,
yes,
and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, and that often cuts across functions. And I think the jury is still out on whether talking about products is the right language for these organizations. There are advantages and disadvantages. whether the language is to speak about value streams and the difference between the operational value streams, how how the organization creates value directly and what enables it to create value. I see some advantages to using a product language, and it's not because we talk about product in Scrum. The main advantage that I see in talking about products is when I talk to leaders of mid-market firms, there is this trend that in order to scale, to better fulfill the needs of your customers, you need to productize. You need to create more consistent products for your customers. So that's a language that is starting to resonate. Let's, be intentional about the balance between bespoke services that we provide and productized services. Even if we're not a product company, let's productize our services. If you look at me, for example, I'm a service provider. Yeah. I'm an agile coach. I'm a management consultant, whatever you want to call it. You can consume my services by having a conversation with me, and we'll figure out what's the best way to support your organization. Or I could create a productized service, which is, I come in, there's an SKU, agility roadmap. I help you figure out how to find gold with AI. Okay? Going through this process of switching from bespoke into a productized service is a product development exercise, although it might not have any product. You see a lot of legal firms, accountants, financial advisors, doctors switching models, switching from a visit to a concierge approach or a membership, even though there's no product around that. And that's they need to develop their organization to a point where that works. That is complex. That's the sort of stuff we're talking about. That's why I think product could be a useful metaphor.
It's interesting. So I'm working with my sons. Both my sons go to a school here that's designed for dyslexia, for language-based learning disabilities, and I've been helping them on some projects. And I actually just wrote an email saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about this more strategically now, having been exposed to some of the work that's being done, the way these teachers they do their day job, and then they're trying to reinvent the processes, systems, and underlying capabilities of the organization." And I said, "Hey, look, I've been looking at this, and I've realized that what we should do is look at these capabilities in the organization and group them as products and have product owners around them. And the reason why we should do that is because I'm saying you got to core versus context, outsource some of this stuff, because it's taken a lot of, these are very specialist teachers. They know OG, they know, stuff that's for dyslexia that I can only barely understand, being dyslexic myself. But the point is, so I just sent that email, because they've got a scaling problem that is, as they've grown, their systems have sort of last possible moment, they've fixed things, as the amount of tape that connects things, a gaffer, sticky tape, and so that's really interesting. It's funny that I'm going through the same thing now. So I guess at the heart of this, the original question is, around the failure of organizations to be able to adopt it. The AI will require a different operating system, I think. And I think, or to take advantage of AI, obviously, yes, AI is just a tool, right? But, and I think it is grounded in the ideas of empiricism, continuous improvement, there's this idea of transparency, all of these things that the product world thinks about, and I think it's also grounded by this concept of boundary and really understanding those boundaries effectively. Now, whether they're value streams or whether they're shared services, or whether they're internal systems, I don't know, and that's to be debated, right? But I think that's the realization I've come to, Yuval. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily an overhaul of your operating system. I mean, we're not talking about reformatting the operating system for your organization necessarily. It depends. Like if you're still running, I don't know, Windows 3.0 for your organization, or you can't even say what's the operating system for your organization. Yes, maybe it makes sense to go look at OKRs. You might want to look at EOS or scaling up, or use Scrum as the operating system for your organization. There are multiple options. But the question we're talking about here is whatever it is, let's say it's EOS because that's very popular in this space.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, is your operating system good enough at sensing and responding, at inspecting and adapting, at organizing around outcomes? Is it really helping you focus and flow the top priorities for your organization? A lot of these operating systems do manage flow, okay? They do talk about, let's focus just on the big rocks, Stephen Covey stuff. There's a lot of commonality. But once you focus on these few big rocks, are those rocks defined in outcomes, which allows you to seek towards your strategic goal rather than execute a plan that might not be the right plan? Do you have leading indicators in your scorecard that allow you to steer? If those are lagging indicators, or you don't have any indicators at all, you can't really steer. You can just execute to the plan. It's much easier to follow a plan and say everything is green and use the watermelon approach for these projects if you don't have evidence to in front of you to confront reality. Yeah. So those are the questions that I help leaders of these organizations ask themselves. Is our operating system set up for the sort of learning in the face of uncertainty that we need for finding AI gold, for leveraging something as uncertain like AI in how it will affect people, how will the technology work? It moves so fast. You can't really define it in terms of a detailed spec or project plan. You need to focus on what's the outcome that we're looking for here. How is this related to the business constraint? Those are the questions to ask yourself about your operating system, ways of working, whatever you want to define. And to be clear, that operating system focuses not on the day-to-day whirlwind, not on operating your business. We're not saying use this operating system to serve your customers on a day-to-day basis. We're not talking about it for running your marketing on a day-to-day basis. It's about developing future things. It's about the unrealized value, the potential, the opportunities that you have as an organization, or the biggest problems that you have. That's where you need this empiricism. That question of what are the things that we can just execute and what are the things where we have uncertainty and we need a testing, discovery, dare I say, agile mindset to tackle them. That's an important question. Because the anti-pattern that I've seen is organizations that really like what they see. They look at the product organization and they really like the agile ways of working, And they're saying, let's use it all over the place. Let's run our help desk using Agile. Let's run our sales team using Agile. And very quickly that becomes an Agile theater, because it doesn't make sense to use Scrum for running an operational process, for running something that's simple or complicated, where, yeah, you can use Lean, you can maybe use Kanban to manage flow, but you don't really need the inspection and adaptation that comes from real product-oriented Agile ways of working like Scrum.
So basically what you're describing is the layer above the operating system that monitors the operating system and then inspects and adapts it and changes it.
I mean, it's a matter of definition. I think
well,
the operating system includes both. Like the operating system is both running the operation, but also developing the future of the operation. If you look at EOS, for example, EOS tackles developing the organization. It talks about what is our strategy, what are our big rocks. It tries to work on the business, not just in the business. It focuses working on the business to the challenges of the business. It's heading in the right direction, but it needs to be complemented, in my experience, with agility as the way to really work on your business. Working on your business is much more complex than running it.
Yes. And what's interesting is the relationship, the frequency that your business, your system has to change is increasing, coupled with the way in which you orient those systems, you align them, you connect them to business strategy, etc., is probably changing as well. So the distance between it reminds me a little bit of, we talk about Toyota production system, TPS, but actually what's more interesting for me has never been TPS. It's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's TDS, the design system. That one book that was been translated from Japanese very badly, that you just read a sentence like 3 times and go, I'm not totally still sure what that means. But how did they, what is the Toyota principles? Now, both TPS and TDS share some common principles. So maybe your sales organization can be empirical, goal-driven, provide transparency, have frequent, et cetera, et cetera. That could be a principle that both organizations share. However, the system is different. However, they have to embed closely, because when your manufacturing process isn't working as effectively as it should, in the case of TPS, you're doing a Kaizen, you're fixing it, but that's going to have some design implications. So it has to come up into a broader design system and then flow back down.
So a couple of thoughts. One is, when you pull down on cord, when you have an issue in your operation that you want to stop and fix, if a customer has churned that really surprised you, and you lost a sale or something happened, you want to stop and ask 5 whys. You want to do a Kaizen moment. You want to think about how to improve. The improvement might come, and the moment you did that, you moved from the operational value stream into the development value stream, in my terminology, another layer of the operating system.
Yeah.
That at that moment, you might go into your product world, which is, I think, what TDS is talking about. Yeah. Or you might stay in the process world. You might reorganize the manufacturing line. You might move a quality check upstream. You might do different things, organize, bring the tools closer, use AI to improve the language that the sales reps use or the customer experience people use, whatever it is. That might not change your product, but that still changes how you operate. That's developing your product, developing your business as constraints. For me, that's if people want to dive deeper into Toyota's world there, I'm thinking about the improvement kata, which is the discipline of constantly looking at the crucial metrics for our organizations, what we believe are the leading indicators. Let's take churn as an example. If we are thinking churn, if we know, hopefully we know rather than think, but that's, a higher bar at the maturity of the organization already. If we know that churn is our biggest constraint right now for growth, we're spending tons of money marketing, we're bringing those people a lot of effort, they leave after the initial period, they leave after 3 months. They sign up for our products and they leave after 3 months. We need to form an hypothesis, and that's where product thinking comes in, or just strategic thinking. What are the leading indicators that affect whether people churn or not? One example might be, do they use the product? If people use the product on the first week and then they don't come back, we kind of see a correlation between that and they churn. The focus of the team, let's say the product team, that will be developing or improving or fixing our customers' experience so that we see lower churn. The focus of that team would not be on churn. Their product goal, it might overall be on churn, but they hopefully have a clear strategy, a how to win strategy that says, we formed an hypothesis that the way to reduce churn is to fix usage, to make sure that people use the product more.
And the hypothesis,
that will be their product goal. Now they have an hypothesis for how do we
do that,
improve usage. And we might learn that that's not working. They might have an intermediate goal, will work a sprint, will work a month on tweaks for what would get people to use the product more. How do we get them back on the wagon? Maybe it's through human, prompts rather than the product itself. Maybe it's the customer experience folks, the account managers that do something rather than the product itself. And we try it and we see, does it move the needle on usage? If it's not, let's find something else. If it is, let's scale it. Of course, we need to check that cohort of people that use the product more actually don't churn. We might learn they still churn. Maybe it's too expensive. So that invalidates our hypothesis. And it's a continuous process that you want to run very quickly and frequently to converge from the way you're running your operation right now to an upgraded version that works through the constraint that you have right now.
It is, it's sort of, when you start talking about it, you start and I know we avoid the word decompose, but you start looking at it from different perspectives, how it drives through. It starts getting awfully complicated. But another benefit of at least thinking about is a product strategy is you've at least made some choices, which reduces that complexity. So, in that example of the churn, it's on this product, bound domain, off you go, small group of teams, etc. One system notwithstanding. All right, we could talk for hours about this, Yuval. And we have, which much to everybody else around us is annoyance often. And I guess I'd like to leave our audience with a little bit of a okay, the AI and the implications for your organization's operating system, sorry. What's the one thing we'd like to leave our audience with? What is that one thing?
I have an invitation for people. So like I mentioned earlier, there are some questions that you can ask about the way you're currently operating that might indicate whether you're set up to find AI gold. You're optimized to find AI gold. I synthesized a set of questions that are inspired by our thinking on products and agility into some sort of scorecard, a quiz that people can use to work through these questions. We'll leave a link in the show
Yep.
notes for how to find it, and I think it's a good start for thinking about this. We're not saying go upgrade your operating system. We're saying let's start by thinking about, is your organization Citrix operating system AI ready, let's say.
And are you ready for AI?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Hey, Yuval, thank you for spending this Friday afternoon with me talking about this kind of very broad, very far-ranging topic. I've certainly learned a few things today, which made me think about things differently. Not sure if that's learning. I guess that is learning. Um, the the relationship between operational systems and designing those systems, and how that has to be in a continuous process, integrated process of change based on the needs of those systems in the context of a business strategy and the needs of the organization is super interesting. And if we can better align those things using maybe product thinking as a mechanism, we could be in a really strong position. And then AI just becomes a very powerful tool for accelerating that, as opposed to AI being this amazing solution that we haven't really got the right problems for yet. I think that's what I've taken away from today's talk. And for our listeners, thank you for listening and bearing with us as Yuval and I wandered aimlessly around the concepts of operating systems, organization operating systems, AI adoption, EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, how it fits in with OKRs, and all these other amazing concepts. Hopefully, you took some value from today's podcast. And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share with friends, and of course, come back and listen to some more. I'm lucky enough to have a variety of guests talking about everything in the area of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile, as we heard today, organizational operating systems as well. So thank you, and Scrum on.